Hello and welcome back to Global Moto Tours. You clicked this link because you wanted information on planning a Vietnam tour, and that's exactly what you're going to be getting. I'm going to walk you through the routes that you can take, the best time of the year that you can go, how do you rent a motorcycle, the road quality, the traffic sense and discipline that you need to be aware of, the food, and of course, kind of bang for your buck you're going to get. So let's start off with the regions in Vietnam. Vietnam is a very long country from north to south. It's about 2,200 kilometers. In principle, it's divided into three main areas. You've got the north, which is with Hanoi as your base. Then you've got the central region of Vietnam, where typically Da Nang is your base. And then you've got the south, wherein the Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon is going to be your base, right? Now, there are many routes that you can ride in Vietnam. It's all dependent on the number of days that you have for your tour and for your vacation in that sense. And in principle, you've got the entire north to south or south to north, as you may plan. Or you can divide it into two parts, either the north to the center or the south to the center and vice versa. You've got the Hajiang Loop, which is really famous, similar to the Leh Ladakh Kashmir motorcycling in India. And then of course you've got your northeast and your northwest. In today's video, I'm going to primarily focus on the north to south, the north to center, south to center areas, so that you can plan an on-road trip. There's no off-road in what I'm going to be talking about. So let's talk about the north to south. As per Google Maps, heading from Saigon, which is Ho Chi Minh City, to Hanoi is about 1,696 kilometers, if I can read that right. But in real terms, the route that you want to be doing is off the highway, which Google Maps tells you to follow. And the true estimate of that is more like 2,200, 2,300 kilometers that you need to plan for. Now, this route is also going to take you, with a decent amount of tourism, stopping and enjoying the sights on the way. It should take you between 18 days to 3 weeks. That's realistic. If you really are in a hurry and you're not really stopping for tourism in the many beautiful places that you're going to be passing, you can finish it in 15 days, but I don't recommend that. It's not going to be a whole lot of fun. So plan for a 3-week vacation wherein you pick up the bike in either Ho Chi Minh City or you pick it up in Hanoi and do north to south or south to north. Moving on, if you don't have that kind of time and you only have, let's say, a week to 10 days available for you, you can choose to do one of the two. The first is doing it from the north to the center or the center to the north, depending on your flights, where you fly in. So while Google Maps only shows it as 750 odd kilometers, it's again on the highway, which is not the fun part of Vietnam. You need to be getting inland into the mountains, and you need to plan for about 1,200 to 1,300 kilometers for this. At an extreme, you can do it in 5 days without really spending time on tourism. But in reality, you should be looking at a 7 to 10 day tour for this particular segment. There are very beautiful sites available. The mountains are fantastic. Riding is great. And you will enjoy it if you plan for a 7 to 10 day trip. The other alternate is to do Da Nang to Saigon or Saigon to Da Nang, which is again very similar. You're looking at about 1,500 kilometers that you're going to be riding. And again, Google Maps is showing you the route along the main highway, which is very crowded, full of trucks, not fun at all. So you want to restrict that highway riding to the minimum when you want to enjoy a motor tour vacation, right? So you are going to be going inland, and that is going to be a much longer route. I will put in more detailed videos in terms of the route that you should be taking when you're doing either of these. The other very famous loop is the Hajiang Loop. That is, like I mentioned earlier, like riding in the Himalayas, wherein there is going to be a fair amount of off-roading, and it is going to be challenging for you, because you are going to be going off track and off road, and you need to plan for that, but that's a completely separate video. Now, when to ride, that's another critical area. As you can see, the country is really long, and there are three distinct regions that you have. So this chart here will give you an idea in terms of the best weather. And as you can see, if you want to ride the north, you want to be planning between December and April, maybe May at the most, before the rains get in, etc. But remember, the north of Vietnam gets very, very cold as well. So you should plan, if you're riding in the north, let's say in January and February, that it will go down to single digit Celsius weathers. And while you may not have much of rain, it is going to get cold. So please plan accordingly. If you want to ride in the center of Vietnam, it's just before that. So basically January through July is a good time for you to be riding. And likewise in the south, you want to be looking at maybe not November, but again December to April. So in principle, the north to south loop, if you want to do the entirety of it, you're looking at, I'd say, February, March being possibly the best time for you to be doing that. Right, so like I mentioned, December through April for the north, January through August for the center, and November through April for the south. Now, in terms of motorcycle rentals, there are so many options that are available to you. I have used Ticket Motorcycles. They've got offices in Da Nang, they've got offices in Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, and one more place, I forget the name, but they've got coverage. One-way rentals is not a problem. And they've got primarily, now I gotta tell you this, in terms of the motorcycles, it's most convenient to move around in Vietnam with smaller engine motorcycles, lighter motorcycles, easy for you to manage. You don't need your BMWs, large cubic capacity motorcycles. Even a 650cc is very large for Vietnam, for a couple of reasons. One, I'm going to cover this in a little more detail later, but the traffic in city, managing that. The second is the security of your vehicle when you are in cities and parked. And the third is just maneuverability and the speed you're going to hit. You're not going to be driving very fast in Vietnam. The roads don't support it. So a small motorcycle is best suited for Vietnam. A 150cc, 250cc motorcycle is more than enough, and you don't need to worry about it. Trust me on it. It's great, and it's great fun being so flickable and light. Right? Make sure that whoever you're renting from, the motorcycle condition, there are a lot of what can I say, dodgy characters renting their motorcycles. Make sure the condition of the motorcycle is fine. Test it out. Check the oil, coolant levels, brake condition, all of that stuff. Please make sure you check it before you leave on your tour. And if it's not okay, you can get another motorcycle from another person. But I recommend Ticket Motorcycles because they've got a solid inventory, and they also understand the need for good quality motorcycles being available to you. Remember that you have to also negotiate and maybe pay excesses for one-way rentals. It is not a problem for picking up a motorcycle in one city and dropping it off in another city, but you just need to make sure that you're telling and booking that with your service provider. Insurance, Ticket offered a certain amount of insurance, a lot of what can I say, small print there that you need to be considerate of. And the liability is pretty much entirely yours. And finally, you do need an international driver's permit to be able to ride a motorcycle in Vietnam. especially for above 250cc, if I remember right. But I recommend highly that you carry an international driver's permit. For the guys in the United States, make sure you're purchasing the one that is valid in Vietnam. So I don't have too many details on that, but just note that there are two IDPs that you can get, but you need to get the one that is valid in Vietnam, right? Now, in terms of riding, Vietnam is absolute fun. It's super great. It's untouched. It's not as, what can I say? It's not as antiseptic as riding in Europe. It's great. You're actually tasting and feeling and smelling everything around you, which is what makes us bikers, isn't it? So what you need to be wary about is cities. And we've all seen these videos of traffic in Vietnam cities, and trust me, it is exactly like that. For our friends from India, you won't have any problem. You'll feel at home. But for anybody else watching this from around the world, be wary and remember that you need to be strong. You need to be brave. You need to go into the unknown and ride safely. You don't need to be aggressive, but you just need to be prepared for this. Watch a few videos about on traffic in Vietnam and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, in terms of food and drink, Vietnamese food is just spectacular. It's natural ingredients, no additives. You're gonna mostly find meat and seafood dishes. For vegetarians, I must warn you that it is gonna be a little tough for you. If you eat eggs, you're kind of sorted because you know you can get a decent breakfast and you can get egg fried rice everywhere. So that's not going to be a problem. But for the meat eaters, it's absolute paradise for you. You won't have any problems. Food is great. But remember, the famous Vietnamese banh mi's and all of that is not going to be available because there's no bread that's being produced outside of the main cities, right? We're talking about little towns and villages that you're going to be passing through. And there's no bread. So you're going to be having traditional Vietnamese food. Which brings me to what we discovered in the first 2 days of our riding. Lunch is only between 11 and 12:30 p.m. And after that, all those restaurants are shut. And we struggled because we said, you know what, let's do a fair amount of mileage and then stop for lunch at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And there was no lunch available. We had to drive 60, 70, 80 kilometers to find one place that had food available for us. So that's something that you really need to be warned about. But the places that you're going to are your regular holes in the walls. Great food. Family set up a simple little stall and eatery and produce the greatest food that's around there. Very, very authentic. Those are some of the places that we stopped at and ate. Don't worry about it. You're not going to get your classic restaurants and service areas and all of that. You're not going to get it. You do need to get into these kind of places to get food, but the food is delicious and the people are warm, welcoming, and a lot of fun, right? So that's pretty much what you're going to be sitting around in a simple place and eating simple food. For the Indians, the group, it's just like sitting in a dhaba and eating in a dhaba. Indians watching, sorry. It's like the dhaba and nothing more than that. The other thing that I wanted to inform everybody is when you're on the road and leaving the cities, you're not going to get coffee that you're usually used to, your cafe mochas or cappuccinos or, hot espressos. In principle, you don't get hot coffee. What you do get is traditional Vietnamese coffee, which is filtered coffee, which is okay. Read up on Vietnamese coffee. It's filtered coffee, which is like an espresso, but it's poured onto condensed milk, and you get ice to dilute it to the kind of consistency that you want. and the condensed milk obviously is very, very sweet. So in the beginning you'll like it, but over time when you're having 5-6 coffees in a day or 3-4 coffees in a day, it'll kind of get to you. The trick is this: it always comes with a spoon, and you only stir how much you need to. Basically, the more you stir, more sweet it's going to get, because the condensed milk kind of merges with the espresso that's been poured on. But what I wanted to leave you with is that you will not get hot coffee when you're on the road. You're going to get only cold coffee, and it's very common for both coffee and beer to be had with ice. We did laugh at it quite a bit and said, what's wrong with them, ice with beer? But it is actually pretty cool. Try it out. You always have the option of not having it with ice, but it was pretty cool to have beer with ice. And as you can see, everywhere they provide you with that ice that you can add onto your beer and your coffee. Now, one other thing that you need to know is language. When you're in the main cities, which is Da Nang, Hoi An, all the tourist areas, Hanoi, Saigon, language is not going to be too much of a problem for you. Most people will speak a spattering of English, and you shouldn't really have a problem. But once you leave the main cities and get into these little towns and little villages, language is a large problem. Well, it's not a problem as long as your sign language is good and you can type away on Google Translate or whichever translation app that you have on your phone. It does an average job. The Translate apps do an average job. They're not very, very accurate in our experience, but in principle, you're going to have a problem with English when you go outside of the main cities. So prepare yourself. If you want to learn a few phrases, especially in terms of food, saying this is what you would like, highly recommend that you do that. Now, in terms of money, Vietnamese dong is the currency in Vietnam, and one USD is about 24,500 Vietnamese dong. One Indian rupee is about 300 odd Vietnamese dong. And these are let me make this a little bigger. Can I make it a little bigger? Oh, all right. These are the currencies, and what you will typically use are the plastic notes that start from 10,000 go on to 500,000. Be careful about the difference between 50,000 and 200,000. That's very confusing. Also between 100,000 and 500,000, especially in the dark, you can get a little confused with that. And so those, you can change money in most banks. If you bring in US dollars, remember that they need to be crisp notes. Soiled notes, used notes are not widely accepted in Vietnam for exchange purposes. The other place that you can go to for good exchange rates are gold jewelry stores. Most towns and even villages have a jewelry store, and they typically exchange your money. Though there has been there's been talk of a crackdown in that sense, saying that the government is trying to bring that to an end. But as far as our experiences go, you can change money in gold stores and banks. You can also use your ATM. The usual, when you travel internationally, the ATM fees are applicable unless you have a debit card or a credit card that doesn't apply those fees. Right, so that's that. In terms of your expenses, it's Vietnam is fairly inexpensive. Like a domestic beer is about 300,000 Vietnamese dong. A meal in one of the places that I showed you would be about 60, maybe 75,000 Vietnamese dong. And do remember that if you go for a Western meal, if you're going to any Western chain, it's going to be expensive. It's going to be easily 5, 6, 8 times more expensive than a local meal. And I recommend that you actually use the local food and eat the local food and enjoy that. To close, I think Vietnam is a fantastic destination to ride. You have so many options, and you can plan for 7-day rides, you can plan for 2-week rides, you can plan for 3-week, 4-week rides. And if you want to go off-road, there are great trails in the northeast. The northwest, though, is unmarked, and that's total adventure exploration kind of a scene. But the rest of it is great. Biggest tip I can give you is two tips actually. One is stay off the highways. They're very, very crowded, lots of trucks, bad driving sense. And the second tip is, in our experience, car drivers are very, very bad. They don't really respect two-wheelers or the distance that you need to give while passing two-wheelers. And more dangerously, they are very, very tentative while driving. So you can't really make a decision. It's very uncertain how they're going to be behaving. But just to close this video, Vietnam is a great place to go to and enjoy yourself. Plan it. If you have any questions, comment below, and I'll do my best to answer it. Cheers and happy riding.